The massive council chamber stretched out like a crystal cathedral, filled with beings from across the galaxy. Ambassador Helen Carter stood at the center of it all, her small human form looking tiny next to the towering alien delegates. Not! Air hummed with tension as hundreds of eyes, tentacles, and sensors focused on her. Chancellor Vexhai of the Zephyrian Empire rose from his floating throne. His blue skin rippled with anger patterns that every species in the room could read. The tall, thin alien pointed one of his 4 arms at Helen while his voice boomed through the translation systems. "The humans have gone too far this time," he declared. "They push into every corner of space without asking. They make contact with species we have left alone for good reasons. They ignore our boundaries and our wisdom." Counselor Grix from the Morphin Collective made a wet clicking sound that meant agreement. Her slug-like body pulsed with bioluminescent patterns as she spoke. "The human ship New Horizon has contacted 7 isolationist species in the past month alone. These species chose isolation. The humans ignored their choice." Helen kept her face calm even though her heart was racing. She had been Earth's voice. In the Galactic Council for 3 years now, she had seen the aliens get frustrated with humanity before, but this felt different. This felt dangerous. "The New Horizon crew followed all established protocols," Helen said in a steady voice. "Captain Jake Morrison filed reports with the Council before making any contact. They waited for approval that came too late," Vexai hissed. "Your Captain Morrison decided not to wait. He made contact anyway. This is exactly what we mean. Humans are too impatient, too aggressive, too willing to take risks that could destroy everything we have built." Around the chamber, other aliens made sounds of agreement. The bird-like Corvani delegates chirped in harmony. The crystalline Nexer beings chimed like broken glass. Even the peaceful Altarian Collective, usually humanity's supporters, remained. Silent Helen felt the weight of their judgment. Every species in this room had taken centuries or millennia to reach the stars. They had moved slowly, carefully, building consensus before every action. Humans had gone from their first space flight to galactic presence in less than 200 years. Too many aliens, this speed felt reckless. "We have tried to guide the humans," Grix continued. "We have offered advice, shared our experience, shown them the wisdom of patience, but they continue to charge forward like younglings who think they know better than their elders." "Perhaps," said a new voice from the back of the chamber, "it is time to teach them a lesson they will remember." The speaker was Torvin Call, representative of the Draxian hegemony. The Draxians were old, older than any other species in the Council. They had been exploring space when most other civilizations were still learning to make fire. When Torvin spoke, everyone listened. "What kind of lesson?" Helen asked, trying to keep the worry out of her voice. Torvin's ancient eyes gleamed. "We send them somewhere that will teach them the value of caution, somewhere that will show them why we older species have learned to be careful." Vexhai's anger patterns brightened. "You mean exile them to a death world?" "Not exile," Torvin corrected. "Education. We send the human diplomatic mission and the crew of the New Horizon to a Class X planet. They can stay there until they learn proper respect for the dangers of the universe." Helen's blood ran cold. Class X planets were considered uninhabitable by galactic standards. They were worlds where the environment itself was actively hostile to most forms of life. No species had ever successfully colonized a Class X world. Most didn't even try. "That's a death sentence," Helen said. Perhaps Grix replied with what might have been a smile on her slug-like face. "Or perhaps the humans will finally learn to ask for help instead of assuming they can handle everything alone." The council chamber filled with the sounds of agreement. Helen looked around desperately for support, but found none. Even the Altarians, who had been humanity's closest allies, would not meet her eyes. "We have selected Kepler 44 to see," Torvin announced. "It is a world with extreme weather, dangerous predators, toxic atmospheric conditions, and geological instability. If the humans are truly as adaptable as they claim, they should have no trouble surviving there." Helen's mind raced. She knew about Kepler 44 to see from the survey reports. The planet had storms that could strip flesh from bone, The native life forms included creatures that could dissolve metal with their saliva. The ground itself shifted without warning, opening chasms. That led to poisonous underground seas. No sane person would consider it habitable. "This is madness," she said. "You're condemning innocent people to death because you're afraid of human progress." "We are teaching a necessary lesson," HFY replied. "When your people are desperate and afraid, perhaps they will finally understand the wisdom of patience and caution." At that moment, the chamber doors opened. Captain Jake Morrison walked in, flanked by his senior officers. Helen had called for them when she realized how serious the situation had become. Maybe seeing actual humans would remind the council that they were talking about real people. It's not just abstract problems. Jake Morrison was everything the aliens expected from a human starship captain. He was tall, confident, and moved with the easy grace of someone who had faced danger many times. His uniform was neat but practical, designed for action rather than ceremony. Behind him came Dr. Lisa Park, the New Horizons science officer, Engineer Ben Rodriguez, and Marine Sergeant Amy Foster. "Ambassador Carter," Jake said with a nod. "We came as soon as we got your message. Is there a problem?" Assembled aliens, then back at Jake. How could she explain that the galaxy's most powerful civilizations had just decided to strand them on a Deathworld? "Captain Morrison," Torvin said before Helen could speak, "you and your crew are being reassigned. You will be taking the human diplomatic mission to establish a new colony on Kepler 4 to see." Jake frowned. "I'm not familiar with that system. What's the mission profile?" "Survival," Grix said with obvious satisfaction. Dr. Park stepped forward. She was a small woman with bright eyes and an eager expression. "Kepler 4 to see? I'd like to see the environmental data on that world. It sounds like it could be scientifically fascinating." The aliens looked at each other in confusion. Where was the fear? Where was the pleading for mercy? "The data shows a Class X death world," HFY said slowly. "Perhaps you do not understand. This is not a research mission. This is punishment for your species' reckless behavior." Engineer Rodriguez scratched his beard. "Class X, huh? That means we'll need to pack some serious equipment." "How long do we have to prepare?" "You have 3 days," Torvin replied. 3 days? Amy Foster laughed. "It's not much time, but we've worked with shorter deadlines. Remember that extraction mission on Titan Base, Captain? We had 6 hours to prep for that one." Helen stared at her fellow humans in amazement. They weren't scared. They weren't even particularly concerned. They were treating this like just another challenging assignment. "You don't understand," she said. "They're sending us to die." Jake looked at her with calm eyes. "Ambassador, we're explorers. Every time we leave Earth, we might die. Every time we enter a new system, we might not come back. That's the job." "But this is different," Helen insisted. "This planet is specifically designed to kill us." "So was Australia," Amy said with a grin. "So was Antarctica. So was the bottom of the ocean. Humans have been living in places that want to kill us since we first climbed down from the trees." Park was already accessing her datapad, pulling up what little information was available about Kepler 4 to see. "The ecosystem sounds incredibly complex," she said with genuine enthusiasm. "The predator-prey relationships must be fascinating, and the geological activity could provide excellent geothermal energy sources." "Geothermal energy," Ben mused. "That could work. If the planet's as unstable as the reports suggest, we might be able to tap into some serious power generation. Could even use the seismic activity to run mining operations." The alien delegates watched this exchange with growing bewilderment. These humans were supposed to be terrified. They were supposed to beg for mercy, to promise they would be more careful in the future. Instead, they were planning their new colony like it was a vacation destination. "Very well," Torvin said finally. "You have 3 days to prepare. After that, you will be transported to Kepler 4 to see. You will remain there until you learn proper respect for the dangers of the universe." "How long is that supposed to take?" Jake asked. "As long as necessary," HFY replied coldly. Jake nodded. "Fair enough. We'll make the best of it." As the human delegation left the chamber, the alien delegates sat in stunned silence. They had expected fear, anger, desperate pleas for reconsideration. Instead, they had gotten enthusiastic planning and casual acceptance. Did we just make a mistake? Grix asked quietly. Impossible, Torvin replied, but his voice lacked its earlier certainty. No species can survive on a Class X world. The humans will learn their lesson soon enough. But as the chamber emptied, more than one alien delegate wondered if they had just given humanity exactly what they wanted, a new challenge to overcome. 3 months had passed since the Galactic Council sent the humans to Kepler-4 for to see. In the crystal spires of the Council headquarters, Chancellor Vexai waited for the reconnaissance report with satisfied anticipation. Soon, they would receive desperate messages from the surviving humans, begging to be rescued from their nightmare world. The reconnaissance drone had been circling Kepler-4 for to see for 2 days, gathering data about what remained of the human settlement. Vexai expected to find scattered graves, maybe a few desperate survivors hiding in caves. Certainly evidence that the humans had finally learned their lesson about respecting the dangers of the universe. Drone report incoming, announced his aide, a younger Zephyrian named Kethmer. Visual data is being processed now. The holographic display activated, showing aerial views of the planet's surface. Vexai leaned forward, expecting to see destruction and failure. Instead, his 4 eyes widened in shock, where the humans had been dropped 3 months ago. A thriving settlement spread across several acres. Clean buildings made from local stone and metal dotted the landscape. Gardens of green plants grew in neat rows. Power lines connected structures that hummed with activity. Smoke rose from what looked like industrial facilities. This cannot be right, Vexai muttered. Check the coordinates. Make sure we are looking at the correct location. Coordinates confirmed, Kethmer replied, his own voice filled with disbelief. This is definitely the drop site. The drone moved closer, revealing details that made the situation even more impossible to understand. Humans walked through the settlement without protective gear, breathing the planet's supposedly toxic atmosphere. They moved casually, as if they were strolling through a peaceful garden rather than surviving on a death world. But the most shocking sight was yet to come. As the drone circled the settlement's perimeter, it recorded something that made Vexai's skin flash with confusion patterns. A pack of razor wolves, the planet's most feared predators, were lying peacefully near the human buildings. The creatures that could tear through starship hull plating were resting in the shade like domestic pets. Get me Counselor Grix, Vexai ordered. She needs to see this immediately. Within the hour, the Council's senior members gathered around the holographic display. Grix's bioluminescent patterns pulsed with disbelief as she watched the impossible scene. How are they breathing the atmosphere? She asked. The seasonal winds should be carrying acid vapors right now. Dr. Torvin Call, the ancient Draxian, studied the images with calculating eyes. Perhaps they have built atmospheric processors, but where did they get the materials? We specifically chose a location far from any useful mineral deposits. The drone's sensors provided the answer. Deep beneath the settlement, thermal imaging revealed a vast network of tunnels and chambers. Something was moving down there, something large and organized. Indigenous life forms, Kethmer reported. The sensors are detecting silicon-based entities in the underground system. They appear to be communicating with the humans. Impossible, Grix declared. Our surveys found no evidence of intelligent life on Kepler-4 for to see. Our surveys never went underground, Torvin admitted quietly. We assumed nothing could survive in those toxic tunnels. The drone descended for a closer look at the human activities. In the settlement's central area, Dr. Lisa Park was kneeling next to a Razorwolf pup that appeared to be injured. She worked calmly, cleaning a wound on the creature's leg, while its massive mother watched without aggression. She is treating one of the most dangerous predators in the galaxy like a wounded house pet, Vexai whispered. The drone's audio sensors picked up human voices. Dr. Park was speaking to someone off camera. The pack bonding behavior is fascinating, she was saying. Once you understand their social structure, they are actually quite protective of anyone they consider part of their family group. The trick is proving that you belong. How do you prove that to a creature with teeth the size of daggers? Asked. A voice that the council recognized as engineer Ben Rodriguez. Same way you prove it to any social predator, Dr. Park replied with a laugh. You show them respect, you learn their language, and you never try to dominate them. They have been protecting this settlement for 6 weeks now. The council members exchanged looks of amazement. The humans had not just survived the Razor Wolves. They had somehow convinced them to become allies. The drone moved to another part of the settlement, where Captain Jake Morrison was emerging from a tunnel entrance that had not existed in the original surveys. He was accompanied by something that made the watching aliens gasp in shock. Walking beside Jake was a creature unlike anything in the galactic databases. It stood nearly 3 meters tall, with a body that seemed to be made of living crystal and metal. Its movements were fluid and purposeful, clearly indicating high intelligence. First contact with an unknown species, Torvin murmured. Humans did not even bother to report it to the council. Perhaps they tried, suggested Kethmer. We did cut off their communications as part of the punishment. Jake was having an animated conversation with the crystal being. Even without understanding the words, it was clear that they were discussing something technical and important. The creature was using what appeared to be a translation device, its responses coming through in perfect galactic standard. The mineral. Extraction will increase by 30% if we extend the tunnel network toward the eastern deposits, the creature was saying. My people can provide the necessary excavation, but we will need more of your atmospheric processors for the new sections. Atmospheric processors, Jake replied. That is what you call them. We just call them air cleaners. But yes, Ben can build more. The trade arrangement is working well for everyone. The council delegation watched in stunned silence as the impossible conversation continued. Not only had the humans survived on the Deathworld, but they had made contact with an entirely unknown intelligent species and established trade relationships. Get me a full scan of the underground networks, Vexai ordered. I want to know exactly what is happening down there. The reconnaissance drone's deep scanning sensors revealed a civilization that took the aliens' breath away. Vast underground cities stretched 4 kilometers beneath the planet's surface. The tunnels were filled with sophisticated technology that blended organic and mechanical elements in ways that no known species had achieved. Kethfer Torvin read from the drone's linguistic analysis. That is what they call themselves. They have been living on this planet for thousands of years, adapting to its hostile environment by building their civilization underground. But our surveys showed no signs of intelligent life, Grix protested. Because they did not want to be found, Torvin replied. They kept their energy signatures low, their surface activity minimal. They had learned to hide from the galaxy, until the humans arrived, Kethmer added. The drone continued its surveillance, revealing more impossible sights. In one area, humans and Kethmer were working together to build what looked like a massive greenhouse complex. The structure used Kethfer crystal technology to filter the planet's harsh sunlight. While human engineering provided climate control systems, they are growing food, Grix observed. But those plants should not be able to survive in this environment. Dr. Park appeared on the screen again, this time working in the greenhouse with several Kethfer. She was explaining something to her alien colleagues while tending to rows of thriving crops. The secret is understanding what the planet is trying to tell you, she was saying. Every environment has its own rhythm, its own needs. Instead of fighting against the acid rains, we learn to neutralize them and use the minerals they bring. Instead of hiding from the seismic activity, we learn to predict it and use it for our geothermal systems. Kethver responded in their crystalline language, translated immediately by their devices. Your species has the gift of adaptation. We have watched many others fail on worlds like this, but humans see opportunity where others see only death. The greenhouse tour continued, showing crops that had been genetically modified to thrive in the planet's unique conditions. Some plants actually seemed to prefer the toxic soil, growing larger and more nutritious than their Earth-based cousins. This is impossible, Vexai repeated for the 10th time. No species adapts this quickly to a Class X environment, but the evidence was undeniable. Humans had not just survived their exile. They had turned it into the beginning of a prosperous colony. The drone's final survey revealed the most shocking development of all. In the settlement's central plaza, a monument had been erected. It was made from both human and Kethfer materials. showing the artistic styles of both species blended together. The inscription, translated into Galactic Standard, read, Haven's Rest Colony, founded by the partnership between humanity and the Kethver, in memory of those who believed some challenges were impossible to overcome. Haven's Rest, Torvin said slowly. They named their settlement Haven's Rest. They see this Deathworld as a safe haven, Kethmer added with wonder. As the council members absorbed this information, reports began arriving from other sources. 3 separate member species had filed formal requests for permission to establish research stations on Kepler 4 for DC. The Altarian Collective wanted to study human agricultural tea. The distress signal crackled through space, reaching every ship in the Kepler system. Commander Zeltith of the Zephyrian exploration vessel Bright Wing was trying to keep his voice steady as his ship was torn apart by the massive space storm. Hull. Breach on Deck 7, his engineer reported. Support failing in sections 12 through 15. We have maybe 2 hours before total system failure. Zalteth looked at his navigation display with growing despair. The storm had caught them completely by surprise, appearing out of nowhere with winds that could rip apart a battleship. His vessel was built for exploration, not for surviving the fury of supercharged solar particles and electromagnetic chaos. Any response to our distress signal? He asked his communications officer. Negative, Commander. The storm is blocking most transmissions, but wait. The officer's antennae twitched with concentration. I am receiving something, very faint.
Ow.
It is the human ship New Horizon, the humans. Zalteth felt a mix of hope and worry. Are they responding to our distress call? Yes, Commander. Captain Morrison says they are en route to our position. Zalteth's crew exchanged uncertain looks. Everyone in the galaxy had heard about the humans being sent to the Deathworld. Most assumed they were dead by now. What were they doing still active in the system? On the bridge of the New Horizon, Captain Jake Morrison studied the sensor readings. With grim determination, the space storm was unlike anything in the standard navigation databases. Streams of charged particles twisted through space like living serpents, while electromagnetic pulses strong enough to fry most ship systems pulsed in chaotic patterns. How bad is it, Ben? Jake asked his chief engineer. Ben Rodriguez wiped sweat from his forehead as he worked at his console. Bad, Captain. The storm would have killed us 3 months ago. But the modifications we made using Kethver technology should hold. Their crystal matrix designs can handle electromagnetic interference that would fry normal circuits. What about navigation? Jake turned to his science officer, Dr. Lisa. Park was studying her instruments with the same focused intensity she had used to understand. Kepler 442c's ecosystem. The storm has patterns, just like the atmospheric tempests on the planet. It looks chaotic, but there are underlying currents we can follow. I think I can plot a safe course, safe being a relative term, added Marine Sergeant Amy Foster from her station. But we have handled worse situations in the past 3 months. Jake nodded. Living on Kepler 4 for to see had taught them all to read dangerous patterns and find opportunity in chaos. The skills they had developed surviving on the Deathworld were exactly what they needed now. Take us in, Dr. Park. Let's go save some Zephyrians. The New Horizon moved into the storm with modifications that would have amazed any galactic engineer. Kethver crystal technology had been integrated into the ship's hull, creating a network that could absorb and redirect electromagnetic energy instead of being destroyed by it. The humans had learned to work with dangerous forces rather than just trying to shield themselves from them as they navigated deeper into the storm. Jake opened a communication channel to the Bright Wing. Commander Zeltith, this is Captain Morrison. You're approaching your position. What is your status, Captain Morrison? Zeltith's relief was clear even through the static. We have hull breaches and failing life support. We cannot move under our own power. Understood. We are going to attach a towing cable and pull you out of the storm. But we need you to shut down all non-essential systems. Our approach is going to get bumpy. Shut down systems. In the middle of a space storm. That is suicide. Jake's voice remained calm. Commander, trust me. We have learned a few things about surviving in impossible conditions. The rescue operation that followed became legendary throughout the galaxy. The New Horizon used techniques that no other species had ever attempted. Instead of fighting against the storm's electromagnetic pulses, they rode them like waves. When charged particle streams threatened to overload their systems, they channeled the energy into their modified Kethver power cores, actually gaining strength from what should have destroyed them. Dr. Park guided them through the chaos with instincts developed from months of predicting. Kepler 442 sees deadly weather patterns. Storm surge coming from starboard, she called out. Electromagnetic pulse in 15 seconds. Ben, redirect power to the crystal matrix. Redirecting now, Ben replied. The ship shuddered as it absorbed energy that would have crippled any normal vessel. Power levels actually increasing. Kethber modifications are working perfectly. They reached the damaged Zephyrian ship just as its hull began to buckle under the storm's pressure. Jake maneuvered the New Horizon with precision born from navigating Kepler 442 C's treacherous terrain, bringing his ship alongside the Bright Wing. Amy, take your team and get those people off that ship, Jake ordered. Already on it, Captain, Amy replied, leading a rescue team that moved with efficiency learned from countless emergency situations on the Deathworld. The evacuation should have been impossible in the middle of a raging space storm, but the humans had developed new techniques for working in hostile environments. They used magnetic grapples, enhanced with Kethver technology, to maintain contact between ships. Their suits incorporated crystal matrix shielding that protected them from radiation levels that would have killed most species. Commander Zolteth found himself being carried to safety by creatures he had been taught to fear as reckless and dangerous. Instead, he saw precision, competence, and a calm confidence that impressed him more than any display of advanced technology. How are you doing this? He asked Amy as she helped him aboard the New Horizon.
Practice,
she replied with a grin. You learn to work with dangerous conditions instead of just trying to hide from them. Once all the Zephyrian crew were safely aboard, Jake began the delicate process of towing the damaged ship out of the storm. This required navigation skills that pushed both human ingenuity and Kethver technology to their limits. The storm is trying to tear the towing cable apart, Ben reported. The electromagnetic stresses are incredible. Can the cable hold? Ch asked. It will hold. The Kethver taught us how to make materials that get stronger under stress instead of weaker. As they slowly pulled clear of the storm, Commander Zolteth stood on the New Horizons bridge, watching the humans work. Were the same beings his government had condemned as too dangerous to be allowed free movement through the galaxy. But he saw no recklessness, no aggression. He saw a crew that had learned to thrive in conditions that would destroy anyone else. Captain Morrison, he said quietly, I owe you my life and the lives of my crew. Just doing our job, Commander. Jake replied, We are all out here together in the dark. We look out for each other. But how did you survive that storm? How did you modify your ship to handle those conditions? Dr. Park looked up from her instruments. We learned from our new neighbors on Kepler 442. The Kethver have been dealing with hostile environments for thousands of years. They taught us that you do not fight dangerous conditions. You learn to dance with them. The Kethver. Zolteth's antennae twitched with interest. We have never heard of this species. They prefer to stay hidden, Jake explained. But they have been willing to share their knowledge with us. In return, we have shared our own techniques for adaptation and exploration. Got the New Horizon reached safe space. Word of the rescue began to spread throughout the galaxy. The story grew with each retelling. The humans had not just survived in a space storm that would have destroyed any other ship. They had used it as a tool, drawing power from its fury and riding its currents like experienced sailors back on the Galactic Council Station. Chancellor Vexhai received the report with a mixture of amazement and growing concern. The humans were not just surviving their punishment, they were becoming heroes. Commander Zolteth requests permission to file a formal commendation for the human crew, his aide reported. A commendation? Vexhai's skin flashed with confusion patterns. For the species we sent into exile? The commander says the humans saved 43 Zephyrian lives using techniques and technology he has never seen before. He wants to recommend them for the Galactic Medal of Valor. The situation was spiraling completely out of control. Humans were supposed to be learning humility on their Deathworld. Instead, they were rescuing other species and becoming legends. "What is the status of the human settlement?" HFY asked. "Growing, Chancellor. 3 more species have requested permission to send research teams to Kepler-4 for to see. The Altarian Collective wants to establish a permanent base there. Even some of our own young people are asking questions about human settlement techniques." HFY looked out at the stars and wondered if the Council had made the biggest mistake in galactic history. They had tried to humble the humans by sending them to an impossible world. Instead, they had given them exactly what they needed to prove they were the most capable species in the galaxy. "Get me a priority communication with the other council members," he ordered. "We need to discuss the human situation." "What should I tell them, Chancellor?" HFY's patterns shifted to something resembling respect. "Tell them that our attempt to teach the humans a lesson has taught us something instead. And I am not sure we are going to like what we have learned." In the depths, Commander Zoltith stood before the assembled Zephyrian High Command, his scaled hands steady as he delivered his report. The rescue had happened only 2 weeks ago, but the ripple effects were already spreading across the galaxy like waves from a dropped stone. "The human crew saved 43 lives," he said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute conviction. "They entered a class of space storm without hesitation. They used technology I have never seen before, and displayed navigation skills that our best pilots could not match." General Kexrith, the oldest member of the High Command, leaned forward in his chair. "You are certain they were the same humans, sent to the Deathworld as punishment?" "Absolutely certain, General. Captain Morrison made no attempt to hide their identity. In fact, he seemed proud of what they had accomplished on Kepler-4 for to see." "Proud?" General Kexrith's skin patterns shifted to show confusion. "Of being exiled to a Class X planet. They do not see it as exile, General. They see it as opportunity. Dr. Park showed me recordings of their settlement. They have built a thriving colony in partnership with an indigenous species called the Kethver. The technology they shared with us during the rescue came from this partnership." The recordings that Zoltith shared with the High Command painted a picture that challenged everything the Zephyrians thought they knew about humanity. The Deathworld that was supposed to humble the humans had instead become a showcase of adaptation and innovation. "Look at this," Zoltith said, displaying images from Haven's Rest. "They have turned the planet's toxic storms into a power source. They use the dangerous wildlife as partners in their defense systems. They have created hybrid crops that produce better nutrition than anything grown on safer worlds." General Kexrith studied the images with growing amazement. "The razor wolves are guarding their children. The humans learn to communicate with the pack leaders. They prove themselves worthy of protection by showing respect for the pack hierarchy. Now the wolves consider the entire human settlement part of their territory. This underground civilization, the Kethver have been hiding on that planet. For thousands of years, no other species ever made contact with them, because no other species could survive long enough on the surface to prove they were worth meeting. The implications were staggering. The Galactic Council had spent centuries believing that Kepler-4 for to see was completely uninhabitable. They had used it as a dumping ground for the humans, expecting them to die quickly and quietly. Instead, the humans had uncovered an entirely new civilization and established the first successful partnership with a truly alien intelligence. "What do our scientists say about their technology?" General Kexrith asked. Zoltith activated another display. "Our engineers have been studying the equipment the humans used during the rescue. The crystal matrix technology appears to be decades ahead of anything in our databases. It turns hostile energy into useful power instead of just trying to block it. Could we replicate this technology? Not without understanding the principles behind it. And those principles came from years of cooperation between humans and Kethver. We would need to establish our own relationship with both species." The same conversation was happening in council chambers and government buildings across the galaxy. Every species that had participated in the decision to exile the humans was now facing uncomfortable questions about their assumptions and their future on the Morphin homeworld. Counselor Grix was meeting with her intelligence advisors in a chamber that pulsed with bioluminescent worry patterns. How many requests have we received for trade missions to Kepler-4 for to see? She asked. 17 in the past week, replied her chief advisor. The Altarians want to study human agricultural techniques. The Procyanans are interested in the mineral extraction methods. The Corvani Collective wants to establish a research station to study human Keith for cooperation. And our own people? 3 separate mining consortiums have filed proposals for Kepler-4 for to see operations. They believe the human Kethver partnership could revolutionize deep planet resource extraction. Grix's patterns flashed with frustration. The humans were supposed to learn humility. Instead, they have become the most sought-after partners in the galaxy. It gets worse, her advisor continued. Intelligence reports indicate that several younger Zephyrian groups are openly questioning the wisdom of the exile decision. They are calling for formal diplomatic contact with Haven's Rest. Formal contact? They want to establish embassies with the species we just punished? The rescue of Commander Zelteth's crew has become a legend among the younger generation. They see the humans as heroes who turn punishment into triumph. The crisis reached a breaking point when the Altarian Collective formally announced their intention to establish a research colony on Kepler-4 for to see with or without council approval. The Altarians had always been humanity's strongest supporters. But this was unprecedented defiance of council authority. Ambassador Helen Carter received the news while working in the gardens of Haven's Rest. She had spent the past 6 months helping to establish the colony's diplomatic protocols, preparing for the day when the galaxy would finally acknowledge what the humans had accomplished. The Altarians are coming, she told Captain Jake Morrison as they walked through rows of hybrid crops that thrived in the planet's toxic soil. Good, Jake replied. Dr. Park has been looking forward to sharing her agricultural research with them, and the Kethver are curious about Altarian biotechnology. This is bigger than just research sharing. Jake, the Altarians are essentially declaring independence from council authority by establishing a colony here. Without permission. Jake stopped walking and looked at the settlement around them. Human. Children played safely in areas that should have been deadly, protected by razor wolves that had become loyal guardians. Kethver and humans worked together on construction projects that blended technologies in ways no single species could have achieved. The air itself, once toxic, had been made breathable through a combination of human engineering and Kethver environmental manipulation. Maybe it is time for the galaxy to have new leadership, he said quietly. You mean replace the council? Maybe the council system does not work anymore? It was designed for species that move slowly and carefully. But the universe is bigger and more dangerous than any of us realized. We need leaders who can adapt quickly, who can turn problems into opportunities. That evening, Helen received an encrypted message from Ambassador Krentel of the Altarian Collective. The message was brief, but carried enormous political implications. The Collective formally requests permission to establish a joint research colony on Kepler-4 to see in partnership with the human settlement and the Kethver civilization. We believe this partnership represents the future of galactic expansion and cooperation. Helen stared at the message for a long time. 6 months ago, humanity had been exiled from galactic society. Now they were being asked to lead it into a new era. She called a meeting with Jake, Dr. Park, Ben Rodriguez, and the Kethver Leadership Council. The crystal beings listened through their translation devices as Helen explained the political situation. The galaxy is choosing sides, she concluded. Some species want to continue the old way of doing things. Others want to learn from what we have built here. Orthok, the senior Kethver diplomat, responded with crystalline tones that translated into careful words. For thousands of years, we hid from the galaxy because we believed other species could not understand cooperation with hostile environments. The humans proved us wrong. If other species are willing to learn, we are willing to teach. Dr. Park leaned forward excitedly. Think about what we could accomplish. Every Class X world in the galaxy could potentially be colonized using our techniques. Species that have been rivals for centuries could work together on projects that benefit everyone. It would change everything, Ben added. Instead of avoiding dangerous sectors, we could turn them into the most productive areas of space. Jake nodded slowly. The question is whether we are ready for that kind of responsibility. I think Helen said, we stopped having a choice. In the matter the moment we decided to thrive instead of just survive? 3 days later, the first Altarian ships arrived at Kepler-4 for to see. They were followed within a week by Corvani, research vessels, and Procyon trade ships. Each new arrival brought representatives of species who had decided that learning from humanity was more important than maintaining the old order. The council watched helplessly as their authority crumbled. Chancellor Vexi called emergency session after emergency session, but fewer and fewer species were attending. Everyone wanted to be part of whatever was happening on the former Deathworld. "We have lost control," Councillor Grix admitted during a private meeting with Vexi and Torvin Call. "We never had control," Torvin replied with the wisdom of his ancient years. "We just thought we did. The humans have shown the galaxy that there are no impossible challenges, only challenges that require new approaches." "So what do we do?" Vexi asked. "We adapt," Torvin said simply. "Or we become irrelevant." The 3 senior council members contemplated the end of the old galactic order. Message arrived from Haven's Rest. It was signed by Ambassador Helen Carter and carried a proposal that would reshape the future of civilization. The message was an NVE. 1 year after the humans had been sent to Kepler-4 to see his punishment, Ambassador Helen Carter stood before the largest gathering in galactic history. The Grand Assembly Hall had been built in orbit around the former Deathworld, constructed with technology that blended human engineering, Kethfer crystals, and contributions from dozens of species. Through the transparent walls, delegates could see Haven's Rest spreading across the planet's surface like a green jewel. What had once been considered uninhabitable was now home to representatives from 47 different species, all working together in ways that had seemed impossible just months before. Chancellor Vexi sat in the front row, his proud Zephyrian, features marked by patterns of reluctant respect. Beside him, Councillor Grix pulsed with bioluminescent resignation. The old Galactic Council still existed, but its power had become largely ceremonial. Real decisions were now made through the Pioneer Accords, the new framework that Helen was about to formally present. 1 year ago, Helen began, her voice carrying, clearly through the translation systems, "Your species sent us to this world expecting us to fail. You believed that facing impossible challenges would teach us humility and caution." She paused, looking out at the assembled delegates. In the audience sat Captain Jake Morrison, now bearing the title of Director of Extreme Environment Operations. Dr. Lisa Park wore the insignia of Chief Xenobiological Integration Officer, a position that had been created specifically for her groundbreaking work with the Kethfer. Engineer Ben Rodriguez had become the galaxy's leading expert on hostile environment technology, while Marine Sergeant Amy Foster commanded the first multi-species extreme environment training course. "You were right about one thing," Helen continued. "This world did teach us lessons, but perhaps not the lessons you expected." Behind her, a holographic display showed images from across the galaxy. On 17 different worlds previously classified as uninhabitable, new colonies were thriving using techniques developed on Kepler-4 to see. Species that had been rivals for centuries were working together on projects that none could have accomplished alone. "We learned that there are no impossible challenges," Helen said, "only challenges that require new approaches. We learned that cooperation with hostile environments is more effective than fighting against them. Most importantly, we learned that the greatest breakthroughs come when different species combine their unique strengths." In the audience, Vorthok of the Kethfer delegation made the crystalline harmonics that indicated deep agreement. The silicon-based beings had become the galaxy's most sought-after partners for deep planet exploration. Sharing knowledge they had kept hidden for millennia, the Pioneer Accords represent a new way of thinking about galactic expansion, Helen explained. "Instead of avoiding dangerous regions, we explore them together. Instead of maintaining rigid boundaries between species, we create partnerships that benefit everyone." Commander Zaltuth rose from his seat among the Zephyrian delegation. The rescue that had saved his life had made him a hero among his people, and the strongest voice for change within the Zephyrian Empire. "The humans saved my crew when no other species would have attempted such a rescue," he said. "They used technology and techniques that came from their partnership with the Kethfer. This is the future of galactic civilization. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Delegation after delegation rose to voice their support for the Pioneer Accords. The Altarian Collective had already established 3 joint colonies using human Kethfer techniques. The Procyon Trade Federation reported that mineral extraction on formerly impossible worlds had increased galactic prosperity by 15% in just 6 months. Even the proud Corvani had admitted that human agricultural methods could solve food shortages that had plagued their homeworld for generations. Chancellor Vex High finally stood, his movement silencing the chamber. As the former leader of the council that had exiled humanity, his words carried special weight. "I must speak the truth," he said, his voice heavy with the burden of his species' pride. "We were wrong. We believed that caution and tradition were the only paths to survival. The humans have shown us that adaptation and innovation are equally important." He looked directly at Helen as he continued, "Tried to punish humanity for being different. Instead, we proved that their differences are exactly what the galaxy needs." Counselor Grix added her own words, her bioluminescent patterns glowing with honest regret. "The Morphin Collective formally withdraws our objection to human expansion. We request partnership in the Pioneer Accords and ask to learn from human adaptive techniques." The formal vote that followed was merely a ceremony. The Pioneer Accords passed with only 3 abstentions and no opposition. The age of careful, cautious exploration had ended. The age of cooperative expansion had begun. Later that day, Ewan walked through the training facilities that had been built around Haven's Rest. Young beings from dozens of species worked together, learning the skills needed to survive and thrive in hostile environments. Zephyrian cadets practiced emergency procedures alongside human marines. Altarian botanists shared techniques with Kethfer engineers. Corvani pilots learned navigation from Dr. Park, who had become legendary for her ability to read dangerous patterns in any environment. "It is remarkable," said Ambassador Krentel of the Altarian Collective, joining Helen as she watched the training exercises. 6 months ago, our species had never worked directly together. Now our joint agricultural project on Kepler 339b is producing food for 3 star systems. "That is just the beginning," Helen replied. "We have applications from over 100 species wanting to join the Pioneer Corps. The galaxy is finally ready to expand beyond the safe zones." Captain Jake Morrison approached, carrying reports from the latest scouting missions. "The deep space surveys are finding more habitable worlds every week," he said. "Planets that were classified as impossible are turning out to be perfect for the right combination of species working together." "Any word from the Rim expeditions?" Helen asked. Jake grinned. "The Andromedans want to meet us. They have been watching our expansion and are impressed by our multi-species approach. They are inviting a Pioneer Corps delegation to visit their galaxy." The news sent ripples of excitement through the facility. Contact with the Andromeda Galaxy had been a dream for thousands of years. Now it was becoming reality because humanity had proven that different species working together could accomplish anything. Dr. Park joined them, her tablet displaying the latest ecosystem reports. "The hybrid ecosystems are exceeding all projections," she said. "Worlds that were hostile to single species are becoming gardens when we introduce the right combinations of life forms." "And the Kethfer expansion?" Helen asked. "Vorthok reports that his people have made contact with underground civilizations on 12 different worlds. They are all eager to join the surface communities once they see the success of our partnership model." As the day ended, Helen stood on the observation deck of the orbital station, looking down at Kepler 44 to see. The planet that was supposed to be humanity's grave had become the birthplace of a new galactic civilization. The razor wolves that once terrorized the landscape now played with children from 6 different species. The toxic storms that should have killed everyone were powering the largest energy grid in known space. Ambassador. Helen Carter opened her personal log and began recording her thoughts for history. "Today we signed the Pioneer Accords and officially ended the old era of galactic exploration. We are no longer a collection of separate species avoiding danger and maintaining rigid boundaries. We are pioneers working together to turn every challenge into an opportunity." She paused, watching as a transport ship departed for the Andromeda Galaxy, carrying the first intergalactic diplomatic mission in history. The Galactic Council sent us to a Deathworld, expecting us to learn humility. Instead, we learned that there are no Deathworlds, only worlds waiting for the right combination of species to unlock their potential. We learned that cooperation is stronger than caution, that adaptation beats avoidance, and that the universe is far more welcoming than anyone imagined. The transport ship disappeared into hyperspace, carrying humans, Kethver, Altarians, and representatives from a dozen other species toward adventures that none could face alone but all could conquer together. The galaxy tried to teach humanity a lesson. Helen concluded her log entry. Instead, humanity taught the galaxy that there are no limits to what we can accomplish when we stop fearing the impossible and start making it possible. Below her, on the world that had been meant as punishment, the lights of Haven's Rest glowed against the darkness of space, but they were no longer alone. Across the galaxy, dozens of other impossible worlds were lighting up with the fires of new civilizations, all following the example set by humans who had refused to accept that any challenge was truly impossible to overcome. The Age of Pioneers had begun, and the universe was waiting.